Hello, friends, and welcome back. Today, we're starting out with our chapter number 4, and this is a very interesting chapter that we are going to be looking at. And this is regarding your startups. Now, why is this an interesting topic? Is because, truthfully, startups is a fairly new topic. I know it's been around for some time now, like a few years, but even till today, there is still a lot of questions about startups. And I think we need to look at startups from the point of view of when it was introduced. You see, startups were a way to encourage businesses to start up without having to go through the formalities of starting up of a business, because that's exactly what we're looking at over here. The subject that we're studying itself is setting up of business entities, correct? Now, when we're studying this chapter, I'd like to take a little bit more of a different approach to the teaching of this subject, or this particular chapter. We're going to assume that, you know we're going to ask a lot of questions, and we're going to try and search for these questions on the internet. Okay, whether it is, yeah, through the internet, we look at articles where people are talking about it. We'll see what could be possible problems, or what is the government doing, how exactly do we find out about these things. you know Studying this chapter from a little bit more of a proactive approach or a more practical approach would be the best way to study this, because when we look at the theory point of it, it sounds good. Everything sounds good in theory, but the reality is something that we really need to address. And the truth is, as a company secretary, let's say you are, whether you are going to engage yourself with a company, or even if you're going to be in practice yourself, I think one of the first questions that people will come and ask you is, should I do this business, or how do I incorporate this company? Or they'll ask you, what is the best way to go about the compliances for this business in this sector? Okay, so it's required for you to be aware of the changing scenario relating to the businesses. And startups is one of the most, what I will call as the innovative approaches of the government to address our economical concerns. You see, with respect to startups, the government has suddenly stepped in and said that I am going to protect you. I'm going to protect startups. I'm going to give you a lot of benefits. I'm going to give you a lot of exemptions. And I'm going to encourage you to start your business in some way or the other. And I assure you, we've had excellent stories of some great startups. Like today, we hear about unicorn companies, companies that have hit like a 1 billion valuation, or 100 million valuation. There's so many topics about these things. And let's talk about one of the most influential startups that we can see, and that is Baiju. As a How did Baiju's become a unicorn? Okay, like I said, we're gonna be referring to the internet for a lot of things to help us understand things in a little bit more of a proactive way, right? So let's just wait for this to load. Great. So if you're going to look at companies like Baiju's, or Swiggy, or even OYO, okay, OYO hotels, etc., they were all at some point, they started out in one way and then they've reached a particular place. Okay, so I think we're having a little bit trouble loading this page. No worries. Okay, we'll come back to our topic over here. So, somewhere, for a person to be able to start up a company, and for the government to come and push it forward and say that, okay, listen, I'm going to recognize you as a startup, was a very big shift. Because let's assume that I wanted to start a business today. By the time I get through my approvals, my registration, my incorporation of a company, additional licenses, I had to spend a whole bunch of money before I can get there. And that was just the start. And then every business goes through a particular cycle of growth. Okay, um, we'll understand it from this concept. Correct. Let's just come back to Byju's. All right, so we're just looking at this one, Byju's learning app. eventually ended up having 15 million users, sorry, 15 million users, out of which 9 lakh were paid users. In the same year, Byju's became the first edtech unicorn. So, what is this unicorn? A unicorn basically refers to an entity that's able to revolutionize that particular industry. And Byju's was a revolution in terms of the education technology. They combined education with technology, providing providing access to education in people's homes. In fact, what we are doing today, you watching these videos, you learning through a technological platform, is an edtech situation, correct? So somewhere we can see that an entity has taken, when I say entity or company, has taken up their company in that particular field and made it the very best, right? So let's come back. When we're looking at our concept of startups itself, okay, it's believed that every company, and I'm just assuming that this is the flowchart over here. Every company experiences, starting from zero, they experience a period of growth, and then there is a downfall, and then again there's a growth, and then there's a downfall, and then there's like a sharp growth, and then again there might be a downfall. So businesses always experience what we call as the highs as well as the lows. You see, between the highs and the lows, sometimes businesses are not able to sustain at that period. It's great when you're getting customers and everyone knows who you are, and everyone wants to try the new product. All of this is great. But up until after one particular high, and let's, for the sake of our example, assume that during COVID, suddenly the candle making business, okay, candle makers, and for some reason soap makers were hitting record highs in their sales. Many people were opening up courses on how to make candles, how to make soaps. All of this was great, okay? And let's say that the revenue throughout 2020 to 2021, okay, like let's say till December, exactly 2 years, the company recorded a sales of, um let's say 90 lakh rupees, and in 2021 they recorded a sale of around 1 crore rupees. And you may ask, can candles and soaps really make this kind of money? Well, I may not have it on good authority, but a lot of people joined into that particular wave. And this is a great business to enter into. And people are doing courses, the people selling courses are making even more money. All of this is great. Now suddenly in the year 2022, okay, they've barely made a 10 lakh sales, and in 2023, zero, nil. And that is what I say, between the highs and the lows. But the thing is that every business goes through this. Anything, whether you're referring to Reliance, or whether you're referring to Tata, or whether you're relating to smaller companies or any businesses that you see around you, everyone will go through these business cycles. Now, it is why businesses prepare for these lows. They prepare for this moment. They will prefer to reduce their debt, and then they will try to innovate a little bit more, so that they can push it out slowly. And they will try to engage with more customers, a higher customer base. They will try to merge with other companies or other companies of a similar nature. There's so many things happening in the business activities. But this is why we say that you require, somewhat experienced people to guide you through this process. But you see, the startups suddenly come out and say that you, every single person around you can open a startup. And it's not that you couldn't earlier, it's just that you didn't have the resources to start it earlier. Now the government is coming in saying, you're short on resources, don't worry, I have you covered. You just make your applications, I will cover a lot of your costs. I'll give you tax exemptions, I'll give you benefits, I'll even give you access to those experienced people. I'll bring the people with the money to you so that they can engage in a some sort of a funding. So you can clearly see that the government itself is pushing the whole startups. Okay, now how does this relate to us as company secretaries? In fact, it relates the most to company secretaries. Especially if you're in practice, you're going to have a lot of people come up to you and say that I want to incorporate a company in so and so matter or in so and so manner. Please tell me, should I incorporate it as a private limited or as an OPC or a public limited company? And this we've been discussing through our chapters till now. But beyond this, what if your client comes up to you and says, how do I get funding, or how do I get the tax exemptions, or how do I get my certificates to show that I'm a startup? Am I eligible for a startup? These are the questions that you're going to get posed as a company secretary. And because these startups are getting so many benefits, existing companies will come and ask you, hey, what is this startup growth that's going on? Are we eligible for startups? Can we also get benefits of this? So now you are put in a situation as to what is this? What is a startup? How is the government supporting us? If we create a new company as a startup, can we get any additional benefits? Then using a startup, will I be able to do this? And as a startup, will I get access to better funding because of this? Because admit it, as a normal company, that's before this whole startup schemes came, your method of getting access to funding was very less. You needed to either go to a bank, or you needed to go to financiers, or you had to borrow money from your known members. Each of them had their own risks attached to it. But suddenly, startups, people are coming and saying, I'll invest in you. Please come, please come. But does someone want to invest in someone who has a paint shop? Or do you want to invest in someone who's just another shop on the road, like selling things that's already found anywhere? No, startups are mostly looked at for their innovative products. What new thing are you bringing to the market? And I came across this particular startup and I found them very interesting actually. And I thought like maybe I could share them with you. So, like I said, again, we're coming back to our internet. Okay. Okay. So this was a particular brand that I'd come across. It's called Spoon. Okay. It's when you actually translate this word into the Tamil language, Spoon refers to one spoon. And they came up with a very innovative way of basically having access to your hot and cold instant beverages in one spoon. So literally the packaging, if you see, will be in the shape of a spoon itself. And if you remove the packaging cover, okay, and as you can see over here, if you simply remove the packaging, then you can pour some hot water or cold water into it, stir with the spoon itself, and you're able to drink and use it. And they have like so many different kinds of ranges of flavors, whether clearly it's all out of stock right now. Okay, but see this particular thing that's coming up, it is being recognized by Startup India. Okay, it's an honor and proud moment to be recognized by Startup India, by the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. So now we're looking at who's the authority, where, what is this, and can you see how they have like a particular DIPP 177144? Let's view their certificate. Okay, this is the certificate granted by the department DIPP. Okay, this is the authority to certify that this particular private limited company, now I'm not able to mark it up to show you. Okay, very rare essential oils and spices private limited was registered as a private limited company in 2015, is recognized as a startup by DIPP. So this is the kind of certificate that you will get. And look at the date of issue. It's in 2018, and the certificate is valid only for 7 years from the date of its incorporation. Okay. And if the turnover of the company has not exceeded 25 crores. So this brings us to the question, can you always be a startup? The answer is no. There is a time period that is applicable to you. In fact, there is even a particular, we can even say that there is a particular paid up share capital that is applicable to you as a upper limit. Okay, so that's about it from this side. Now let's probably go back to them. And yes, this is what I want to show you. Can you see over here, Spoon patent? Okay, as a startup, they have gotten a patent, and they even have something known as a design, because a design is basically applicable when you make a new design with respect to a to um, say a particular thing, like you made a new way of doing it. But let's come here, certificate of registration of design. Okay, and they've gotten a design certificate from the this thing, and this is the nature of their design. So this is how you will get a certificate saying that, okay, this design belongs to you. So it's basically a cup with a handle, and this cup will consist of their items. And they will show the front view, the back view, and then even the perspective view. And the novelty is that the way in which they've given the spoon. All right. So basically, this is a design protection. Okay. I just want to show this to you to see how startups have made use of their of the benefits that is being granted by the patent. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you as, show you as an example, because look at what we've understood so far, that as a private limited company that was registered as a company, they were able to be recognized as a startup India. So that means to be recognized you had to make an application, and now you need to ask who you make that application to. This is the DIPP, the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. Subsequently, if you have any innovative ideas, you can even get a patent protection or a design protection. And in their case, they've gotten a design protection. Now, knowing how companies work, this will also be trademarked. Okay, so now that we've seen all of this, let's come back to our concept of startups. Fine. When we look at a startup, we can say that it is something that is bringing in something innovative. Okay, whether this it's an innovative product, which we saw as an example, or even an innovative process. Fine. So in some way, this startup has the ability to scale up to unimaginable levels, as we had seen in Byju's, as we have seen in so many other companies that have become unicorns. Okay, so startups, the only thing with with startups is that what you need to understand is that where there is a high risk, okay, where there is a high risk, there is a high reward also. This is just the general rule of life, whether it is in companies, whether it's in businesses, or whether it's in our day-to-day activities. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. But also, okay, if it's higher the risk, equally you can also fall. The same thing applies to companies. Since startups are such innovative products, you don't even know if it's going to work out. Like, there are so many innovative products out there, but do we use all of them? Just open up your phone and check for something known as Amazon finds. Okay, and people will find the most amazing things out there. But is it usable by everybody? Probably not. So the point I'm trying to say is, with respect to a startup can really succeed very well, or it can also fail. That is the risk behind it. But because they're bringing some kind of an innovative product, the scope for the reward is also very high. So we can actually see that, believe it or not, the number of startups that have failed, okay, this I've taken out a particular website for you. I've just basically asked how many startups have failed in India. You see, this number I think was taken around the year 2023, and there are a lot of startups. I assure you, there are a lot of startups, but studies show that only 20% of the startups survive for survive for more than 5 years, and only 8% manage to survive behind beyond 10 years. So that means if you have 1 lakh startups, then only 20 companies actually survive beyond 5 years, and only 8 companies make it to 10. This number is very bad. Okay, now why is this very bad? Let's note this down. Okay, let's assume, and I think we already have like a number, but we'll take out that number a little bit later on. Let's say there are 1 lakh startups. Okay, out of which only 20 make it to 5 years, and only 8 out of this 20 make it to 10 years. All right, now how many startups can we have? We can have a lot more startups, but the point is, from your perspective, tell me, is this something worth investing in? Is it something worth pushing forward? Now the government has even come and allotted 10,000 crores just to support startups. And in additionally, they've brought in schemes, they've brought in different kinds of supports just to support these startups. But the numbers are not very good. 20% 5 years, 8% over 10 years, that's really bad. That means only 8 companies will survive. So that means only 8 companies are making use of this 10,000 crores. That's a very wrong way of putting it, I know, but from your perspective, what is the reason behind the government pushing startups like this? For this, we come to something known as ease of doing business. Okay. Now, ease of doing business was basically a concept that was introduced because we noticed that foreign investors just do not want to come to India. They do not want to come to India. Now, whether it is due to the process of incorporation, which is so extremely technical and difficult, or is it for the purpose of winding up of a company, or is it for the purpose of raising funds in a company, raising funds or sourcing labor or raw material. Okay, so many things prove to be very difficult. Incorporation, you have to deal with the government. Winding up, even more of a headache. Any kind of additional compliances, forget it, you will just be bleeding money. All right, then on top of that, you have to get all sorts of licenses. You can just sign over your company to all the government officials, because that is how technical and difficult it was to get all these done. And foreign investors had absolutely no reason to come to India. Then you had to try and raise funds. Each one is trying to pull off money into their own pocket and scam and swindle you. Labor and raw materials. Labor and raw materials, we could just simply say that there'd be gangs forming up, unions forming up just to target foreign companies. This was the scenario. In a way, we can say that it still exists in some places, but this is changing. Okay, now one, I won't say that startups came due to the concept of ease of doing business. No, it's that when the startup when the concept of startups were brought in, it was done with the idea of bringing innovation to the market. When you bring innovation to the market, you can even try and attract foreign investors. And our government is slowly trying to ease how business is being done in India. All right, so yes, when people are able to come out with innovative products and across different industries, whether it is defense, whether it is robotics, whether it is food products or services, whatever be the case, now suddenly India is matching at the international level, and we are bringing innovation, and there is a boost to the economy. So yes, the numbers don't seem like it's correct, because only 8% survive after 10 years. I mean, what is the logic behind it? But no, this is to be seen from a much bigger macroeconomic level. The purpose of pushing startups is to encourage business, is to encourage innovation, because the ones that do end up making it will give a huge boost to our economy. All right, so we're going a little bit off topic, I know that, but coming back, we can try and we can understand that startups are high risk businesses, but they are being pushed forward for particular reasons. and we'll consider those reasons a little bit later on. But the one thing we saw with the certificate that that company or a spoon saw, that is they had a validity only of 7 years, and if they crossed a particular paid up capital, then they could no longer be seen as a startup. So basically what we can see is that a startup is not permanent, and a startup actually goes through many processes, whether they continue to remain a startup, or whether they are a small company, or whether they decide to go into a listing, and they decide to go IPO, and whether they decide to merge with a bigger company. A startup normally goes through multiple stages, but since they operate in high risk sectors, it is a little bit difficult. you know if you had 10 lakh rupees, would you go and invest it in a Tata company, or would you go and invest it in a startup? Any day I'd choose a Tata company because they're safe. My money won't get eroded. I know that the company has existed for so long, my money is safe. But who will be the ones to go and invest in startups? High risk investors. They are the ones who see a higher risk, a higher reward. And so the same 10 lakh rupees, which will probably become 12 lakh rupees if I invest in a Tata company over 5 years, then the same 10 lakh rupees can even become 10 crores if I invest it into a startup. But can I also lose my entire 10 lakh rupees and then become liable to debt? Possibly. Who knows? That is why we say high risk setups. Okay. Now let's try to understand a very practical point of view from a startup founder's view. Okay, and friends, this is an introduction class. Okay, this is to help us understand why startups do what they do, why certain benefits have come to them, and how they can actually make use of it. So, if you're interested in starting a startup, then I guess this would be a good learning experience for you, and also to understand what are the technical difficulties that people face. Okay, so first things first, a startup has to be incorporated as a private limited company. And let's bring back our company. Okay, Helix. Oh, sorry, we've already changed our company's name to Maya Private Limited. Okay, so we've been taking the example of Maya Private Limited for quite some time, and we're going to assume over here that we are a startup. Okay, now Maya Private Limited has two founders. Okay, we have Vishal and we have a Harani. Both of them holding 50% shares, 50% shares. Let's assume that the authorized share capital is 15 lakh rupees. The paid up capital, sorry, let's not keep it as 15 lakhs, let's keep it as 1 crore. And the paid up capital is 15 lakhs. Okay, so 15, let's make it 10 lakhs. Okay, so it's 10 lakhs. That means Vishal has brought in 5 lakhs, and the same thing, Harni has brought in 5 lakh rupees. Okay, now Maya Private Limited is engaged in the business of mm, drone technology. Okay, drone technology to deliver goods to through courier services. Okay, so with this drone technology, if you simply order for your goods, then the drones will come and they will immediately deliver your goods, thereby reducing the time of transport. Okay, also you don't need that much labor because these drones work much faster. Can I say that this is an innovative platform? Is this innovative? Yes. Is this going to cut across the industry and push up the industry? Yes. Is it highly risky? Definitely. Because I mean, 10,000 things can go wrong with respect to drone technology. Correct? But it is great. Like these founders are doing a good job, but the only problem is they need funding. Okay, so with only 10 lakh rupees in hand, they have managed to incorporate a company and they have started their work. But you see, this drone technology still needs to be, there still needs to be research and development. Okay. At the research and development stage, do they have a working model or do they have an actual product? The answer is no. But for the purpose of research and development, they need 50 lakh rupees. Okay. And so they approach a person. They approach multiple people. They even think about going on Shark Tank India and all of that. But nobody is willing to give them 50 lakh rupees because everyone's like, hey, drone technology, it's not going to work out. You please close your company and keep going ahead. All of that will happen. Now, let's say Mr. Prakash sees the scope of this technology and he says, okay, I will invest 50 lakh rupees in your company. But now the question is, what does he want in return? Does he want profits? There's going to be no profits. It's still at the research and development stage. Only if you have a product to sell, you will be able to get money and then pay profits out of it. You're operating on nothing. Everything is going to go into research and development. So, what does he want? Mr. Prakash is what we call as a seed investor, okay, or the initial investor. So, he's an investor who's bringing in seed capital. What do you mean by seed capital? A seed is basically something that grows into a tree. And so he's bringing in a capital that allows this company to grow bigger. Okay. Now, in return for the seed capital, Mr. Prakash is asking for 10% of the equity shares. Okay. So he's bringing in, he's asking for 10% of the equity shares. So now how do we give him 10%? Vishal is holding 50, Harni is holding 50. So now what will happen is there will be a transfer. What? There will be a transfer of shares, or there will be a fresh issue of shares. This is what is going to happen. Either there will be a transfer of shares or there will be a fresh issue of shares. Now, there's a transfer of shares basically from Vishal. Vishal will give 5%, Harani will give 5%. Or if there's a fresh issue of shares, these shareholding will end up getting diluted. So let's assume from the point of view of transfer of shares, what really happens. Vishal will continue holding 45%. Okay, Harani will end up holding 45%, and Mr. Prakash will now be holding 10%. Okay, this is how it's going to be. But then when there's a fresh issue of capital, and I'm not going to be doing a lot of calculations over here, we can simply say that Vishal's and Harani's like the shareholding will also end up getting diluted. So yes, Mr. Prakash will be they'll be holding the same amounts, but new shares will be issued. And then over here, what will end up happening is the authorized capital is in fact 1 crore rupees. But now the paid up capital will become what? It will become, it's already at 10 lakh rupees plus 50 lakhs, it's going to become 60 lakh rupees. Okay, this is what will end up happening when there's a fresh issue of shares. Fine, all of this is great. Now, what happens to the company's valuation? Now, when you look at the valuation of this company, right? If you have to look at the valuation of the company, you'll notice that if 10% of the equity shares is equal to 50 lakh rupees, okay, then how much is 100% of the equity shares equal to? Because up until now, when the two founders brought in 10 lakh rupees, we can basically say that your company is worth only 10 lakh rupees, correct? But then now there is a valuation. A valuation is what? For 10%, a person was able to bring 50 lakh rupees. So then 100% is equal to 5 crore rupees. Okay, so now the value of the company becomes 5 crores. Okay, and now this 50 lakh rupees, is it go? I mean, the investor brought in this 50 lakhs. So now, how do you actually calculate the value of shares? We're going to calculate 50 lakh rupees divided by the total number of shares that was issued to him. Okay, so Assuming that he was issued 1000 shares, then we can say that each share was 5000 rupees. Okay, so this is the valuation game. When you are able to give percentage wise to different investors, then the value of your share will keep on increasing. Now, when we say value of the share, please understand, initially when we said that the capital was 1 crore, we should never just say capital of 1 crore. We should say authorized capital is 1 crore divided into 10 lakh equity shares of rupees 10 each. So how many are there? 10 lakh equity shares of rupees 10 each. Okay, but with this valuation, now I understand this valuation can be a little bit excessive. So let's say that he has got 10,000 shares. With Mr. Prakash, when he brought in 50 lakh rupees, we're assuming that we're giving him 10,000 shares. Okay, and this, the price of one share will now be 500 rupees, correct? So 500 rupees is the value of one equity share, but this 500 will be divided into 10 plus 490 rupees, because this is the face value of the shares, whereas this is the premium paid on a share. Please understand that this is the premium paid on the share, and this is what we call as the securities premium. Now, one round of investment is over. Now, what these founders want to do is, and even Mr. Prakash is saying, this is a great company, R&D is doing so well, let's get more investment. And this time they will go to institutions or financial structures where they can get the same. Okay, now at this point, let's say um, XYZ venture capitalists. Okay, they are looking at the growth of this company and they're thinking, wow, great company to invest in. Let's do one thing, let's invest 10 crore rupees in this company. Okay, for 20% equity capital. Okay, for 20% equity shares. Wow, so look at it. Someone paid 50 lakh rupees. Okay, how much they paid? 50 lakh rupees for 10%. Look how the valuation has jumped up. For 20%, now they're paying 10 crores. That is how many X's, right? That is so much of a higher valuation. So that means now this XYZ venture capitalist, as more and more people start coming to become investors, the valuation of your company will keep on increasing now. So now you do the calculation. If for 20% they're bringing in 10, sorry, if for 20% they're bringing in 10 crore rupees, then for 100%, what is the value? That is what we need to ask with respect to valuation. In this case, we can say that our company is now valued at 50 crore rupees. Where is the valuation of 5 crore and where is the valuation of 50 crore? Simply because one XYZ venture capitalists came and decided to pay 10 crore rupees for just 20% equity shares. Now, I know I'm giving you a very, very, very simple baseline of how startups actually value themselves. There's a lot more technicalities to this. Okay, there's in terms of valuation of proper assets, and all of these things are required. But this is how companies can get valued. This is based on the previous valuation. They can go and get additional funding. All right. So coming back, now let's assume that we have poor investors. Sorry, we have who do we have? We have Vishal, we have Harani, we have Mr. Prakash, and we have XYZ venture capitalists. And let's assume the company has even more investors. You've heard of all these companies going IPO, right? Sachin Tendulkar was one investor, or Dhoni was an investor, or Katrina Kaif was an investor. Like, all these celebrities will now suddenly come in and they'll start putting in money. And then when the company goes IPO, then they will make a lot of money. So sometimes what we can see is these companies, okay, these companies will now decide to go for an IPO, okay, and they will raise money from public. how many of you have invested in Zomato, or how many of you invested in Nika, or how many of you invested in any one of those recent IPOs that came out, right? So this is how companies actually go through a growth structure. Initially they get some initial funding, then they get additional funding, then it grows into something bigger, then they attract more investors, then they can go public. There's so many ways in which from a startup it can end up becoming one of the biggest companies that we've seen. So when we look at our own chapter, okay, I think like we have understood the concept behind startups, and now we're going to also be looking at how to register them, right? With respect to startups, we're going to be seeing what are the rules applicable, and we're also going to be doing case studies with respect to Zomato and this company called Delivery. All right, so let's start. um, from the next class onwards, we'll be starting out with the basically the definition of startups, what is required, what was the government policies to help push startups. So I'll see you guys in the next class.